This is KGW News at 11.
Watching our streets be full of tents and garbage and people peeing against the buildings, and I mean, it's just not, to me, it's not normal.
Sprawling homeless encampments have troubled the West Coast for years, forcing local leaders to look for solutions. Thanks for joining us tonight at 11. I'm John Adams. Tomorrow, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear a case that could change how cities like Portland deal with the issue. Our Ashley Grahams has a closer look at the case the Supreme Court will hear tomorrow morning.
It can be easier to ignore all the tents that line the streets in downtown Portland if you're driving. But it's not so simple if you're on foot.
I just kind of watch where I walk and kind of just keep my distance.
Linda Krogh lives near Portland State University.
Of course, I'm old, but watching our streets be full of tents and garbage and people peeing against the buildings, and I mean, it's just not, to me, it's not normal.
On Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear a case that could change how cities like Portland deal with homelessness.
The case is Grants Pass versus Johnson, and the court will have to decide if cities can fine or jail homeless people for camping in public.
Well, there's not been a homelessness case that has gone this far through the legal system, ever.
Jeremiah Hayden is in Washington, D.C., following the trial for Street Roots, a social justice nonprofit based in Portland.
So they've started putting in some pretty extreme measures that make it literally impossible to be homeless in Grants Pass without getting increasing fines and then eventually getting kicked out of parks, which then leads to jail time.
The small Oregon town says they need these tools to prevent sprawling encampments.
No jurisdiction, no city or county should be able to make homelessness a crime without providing the kind of shelter that we need in each community.
Chuck Curry is a minister and a homeless advocate who argues the criminal justice system will just make it harder for homeless people to get into housing.
What we need is more affordable housing, more mental health care, and more drug treatment in our community.
The issue isn't whether homelessness is a problem, but how to solve it. And Krogh doesn't think we're any closer to a solution.
You know, I'm old and I don't think it's going to get straightened around before I die. That's how I feel.
Well, the Supreme Court justices will begin hearing oral arguments tomorrow, but it could be months before they issue a decision. John?
All right, Ashley, thank you. And tomorrow on KGW, we will be breaking down the arguments both on air and online. So stay tuned for the latest on this case. As the Supreme Court prepares for that debate, a new study by Portland State University hopes to shape the way those experiencing homelessness are housed. Researchers look back through 2 years of data and interviews. They found that congregate shelters, or traditional shelters that house a lot of people, didn't lead to the best outcomes for the homeless. They found better results for alternative shelters like motels or villages.
Motel shelters and village shelters, they tend to be smaller. They're with the same group of people. And, the clients there felt very supported. They could build a sense of community. And they built really good relationships with the staff who were able to help them navigate some of these really complicated services.
Well, they found a big reason why they work is the privacy that those offer. While alternative shelters are more expensive, researchers say it's better to put people in shelters that will help them build a better life. This week, Portland City Council is set to consider 2 different camping ban proposals. They were scheduled to potentially vote on one proposal from Mayor Ted Wheeler until Commissioner Rene Gonzalez introduced his own plan. Wheeler's plan would impose fines or jail time if campers refuse shelter when there is space available. Gonzalez's would allow the mayor or some other designee to set the rules when it comes to camping on public property. City Council is expected to discuss both proposals on Wednesday. Well, turning now to weather, an absolutely beautiful end to the weekend in the Portland area. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri joining us now. Joe, how's the start of the work week looking like?
Oh, chef's kiss for both Monday and Tuesday. We're going to be looking at temperatures in the low to the mid 70s in a few locations. We just have to get through the chilly temperatures. This is what we woke up to earlier this morning, right around the low 30s. The low 30s for the later part of April. Yeah, that's on the colder side for sure. Heading into tomorrow, it's going to be a little bit cooler, right around the low 30s again, but The interesting thing about tomorrow morning is we are going to be seeing some areas of frost. Frost advisory is in place throughout parts of the Coast Range into southwest Washington and even into the metro area and all the way into parts of I-84. Now, as we look at the weather headlines, areas of frost and freezing is the big takeaway heading into tonight and tomorrow, but we stay dry over the next couple of days. We really don't see any threat of rain move in until Thursday, and by Thursday and into Friday, it's going to be pretty wet. Highs jump back into the low to the mid 70s by Tuesday, but again, for tomorrow, we're still looking at a lovely day, John, with temperatures right around 70 degrees. Thanks in part to that ridge of high pressure that's going to be holding strong, at least for the early part of the work week. I'll talk more about just how much rain we could be seeing by the later part of this week in my detailed forecast. All
right, thank you, Joe. We'll see you here in a little bit. Well, new tonight, fire crews in North Portland spent part of Sunday getting a warehouse fire under control. Portland Fire and Rescue were called shortly after 10 this morning to an auto repair shop in the Overlook neighborhood. While trying to get into the building, they found that the pressure was so great they needed to ventilate the smoke before they could get in. After cutting a large hole in the roof, firefighters were able to get in and put out the fire. No one was hurt, and the cause of the fire is under investigation. Up to Mount Hood now, where the historic Timberline Lodge welcomed back guests today. It opened its doors after being closed since Thursday night after part of the ski resort's roof caught fire. The lodge's marketing director tells us the cause was most likely due to lingering embers from the fireplace. While guests were welcomed back today, there is still much to do as far as repairs and historical restoration.
The connection to this place over lots of different generations is near and dear to a lot of people.
When you think of Oregon, I see Timberline Lodge.
It's kind of like my local playground, I'd call it. A sacred space that fills people with stoke.
The marketing director says while challenges remain, they're through the worst of it and Timberline is still here to stay. A local coffee chain is investing in downtown Portland while cleaning up the community along the way. Stumptown Coffee Roasters is celebrating the opening of its newest coffee house this weekend in the West End, in part by hosting a trash cleanup. The business calls it a thank you to the community for sticking with them through the pandemic.
Every downtown in the country has experienced safety concerns as well, but that isn't stopping us from continuing to commit.
Volunteers tell us they are noticing a slow turnaround for the downtown area, and they're excited to see the area not just cleaner, but on the path to revitalization. Now check this story out. Video from the Mist Birkenfeld area shows a cow up to its neck in mud being rescued by firefighters. The Mist Birkenfeld Rural Fire Protection District says Ruby the cow was stuck for over a day before being discovered and rescued this afternoon. Ruby was barely able to breathe when crews arrived there on scene. It's so sad. They were able to pull Ruby out of the creek bed with a harness and heavy machinery.
That type of mud, it's a very thick mud, and there's a lot of suction around the animal. And so she could barely move her legs and just trying to basically trying to keep herself afloat. It was almost like a quicksand.
We are happy to report tonight, however, that Ruby the cow is doing well after the rescue. It's a race that combines two things Portland's well known for. This morning, thousands took part in the return of the iconic Bridge to Brews walk and run. Participants ran either a 10K or an 8K across the Hawthorne, Morrison, or Broadway bridges. When they finished, they were treated to a beer festival with more than a dozen brews on tap, plus music, games, and other local vendors.
If you like Portland, if you like running, or if you like beer, this is a spot for you.
Everyone's just so positive. It's just really nice.
I just love the energy.
Yeah.
I love being out there with everybody, and everybody is sharing that same feeling.
And the weather cooperated so well.
Well, if you weren't a runner, the beer festival was still available to those who skipped the race. And for children, there was a half-mile fun run.